Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader. Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm David Horsager. I'm so thrilled to have you with me, especially because of our guest today. He is a sports marketing legend. He has been the agent for everybody from Yogi Berra to Mariano Rivera, right? Eli Manning. I mean, he's done so many things. He invented well, I'm going to save that for a little bit, what he invented. But let's go. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Well, first, nice to be with you. You know, we go way back, and I've learned so much from you, Dave, about trust and about relationships. And also your drive is it's very contagious, man, your energy. So I love you. And it's nice to share a few minutes with you. I always like talking with you. Always going to get some nugget out of this. So I'm looking forward to it.
You know, I actually put a few words down. When I think of Brandon Steiner, I put a few words down, entrepreneurial driver. By the way, I don't do this for everybody on the show, but I was thinking, who is Brandon Steiner? He's an entrepreneurial driver, but he's also a generous giver, and he's values driven. I mean, I think I've even seen you over your time really drive, sales and business, but also be led by values. I think, one of the first times I met you, I guess we met, but you picked me up, took me up to your place outside of New York. We played basketball. I'm like, I don't have any stuff. Oh, don't worry, I've got all this stuff. I was staying overnight at your house. I mean, we talk about a generous giver to someone that you didn't even know. I talk about that. But let's jump into you. Tell us a couple things you think we should know. We don't, most people know Brandon Steiner. I've sat with you right behind the home plate at the Yankees games, and you've been so generous, even to my publisher and everything. I think of all things, but let's start with a couple things we should know about Brandon Steiner that maybe we don't know.
Well, thank you. I mean, the reason I was looking forward to this conversation and why I really engage with a lot of your material is a lot of who I am is based on trust. I would be nowhere if people didn't know, especially in the collectible business. Most people know me for collectibles, not so much on the marketing, where I've been marketing players for 30 years with the Steiner Agency, helping companies grow by getting them athlete to endorse them or partner with them or invest. So that business is rolling. But again, that's trust because, these players have a million people coming at them. They could have anybody. But when you get the biggest names in sport, from Muhammad Ali to Eli Manning to Jeter to Mariano, all being able to work within, a quick little click and a pick and a dial, that's what I look at that I'm really most proud of, is that a lot of these players trust me to handle their brand and licensing. And particularly in the collectible business, where there's been a lot of forgeries and a lot of bad things happening. When you think of Steiner, you think of me as being somebody who's a trusted source to get you a really cool item. And I'm very grateful. I can't express the importance of trust in relationships, because especially when you get up the ladder, assuming you're climbing the ladder against the right building, you must not mess up the trust game, because you don't get another Muhammad Ali. You don't get another Derek Jeter.
How did you do it? You started out with nothing. You started out with nothing. And I want to go back to that when you bought Yankee Stadium. But before we do that, how did you build trust? You had nothing. How did you build trust with, Michael Jordan or Muhammad Ali? How did you even get in to even, once it was before even becoming their agents? How'd you do it?
When you talk about trust, it's not one thing, it's a million little things. But the reality of it is trust and relationship building kind of work side by side, kind of parallel. And I think the most important thing is value. Value is what you could do for someone that they can't do for themselves. So first thing you want to do to build trust is create value in a relationship between two people. And the second most important thing, I can't express this enough, is that you've got to be able to be a solution-based business person. So you're building, what can I do to help you? Regardless of whether it helps a sale, you've got to be a solution-based business person where you're looking to help somebody because they've got a problem. You're trying to find somebody's problems. In my case, I try to find what people are excited about, and I try to help them drive it. The key thing is when you're playing the long game, which is a very key component to building trust and building relationships, you have to be willing to do things for people, create value, even though sometimes it doesn't help yourself. And if you're willing to do that, then you're probably in a good shape to be extraordinary. but also it's a tremendous feeling. I always think like helping people is not a burden. It's actually an opportunity that will lead you to sheer joy. So you've got to take your business practices and really be up for that, to reach out, to be a solution-based business person, to serve people. I always say, like, if you want to fill yourself, forget yourself. Like, can you really want to reach out and help people? I'm constantly looking for people that need help with something. And then if I can help them, it's a great way of building trust and building a relationship. I dropped a few nuggets in there, but that's kind of it in a nutshell, which is create value, do for something for someone that they can't do for themselves, be a solution-based business person, be somebody who wants to serve, be somebody who wants to forget yourself and care about somebody else as much as you care about yourself, which is very difficult for young people, by the way, if you're watching. I know it's hard, but if you can go do that over the long haul, like I've been into the game of trying to help people and not expect anything back for years when I had nothing.
But how did you,
so
let's
now
take
I'm
this.
sitting here going, wow, man.
Yeah.
I look through the thank you letters and the generosity that I get back from people that I helped 30 years ago, 35 years ago. I don't even have anything. Yeah. It's such a joy when you get letters from people knowing you had an effect on them. Because at the end of the day, really why are you here, Dave? To help people and to help, and also to get better and build and become a bigger solution-based person.
How did you do it? Let's just take someone. I think there was a story I'd read about you want to build this relationship with Michael Jordan or with, just take anybody, and you've got some of the best in the game, and you don't know them at all. You're a young agent. You got nothing to give them to speak of. How did you start building a relationship with these? Now it's become, it's sports empire in a way, but how did you, that building of trust early on with people that, like, they can't trust anybody in many cases. Somebody's going to take something. How did you build trust and such a name all the way up to the Yankees letting you have the, Yankee Steiner brand? But how did you do that?
Well, my new company, CollectibleXchange, what's been the blessing is how many people now have slid over and now work with me on my new company. Mm-hmm. But I think what happens is, I ask everybody that's listening, think about it. When you meet somebody really wealthy, you meet somebody who has a big account, or you meet a celebrity, the first thing you think of, what can I get from that person? This is going to be unbelievable. The first thing I think of is, what can I do? What can I give? How can I help this person? I'm not thinking at all one iota. Of course, it's a multi-gazillionaire celebrity. Of course, it's some big account that if they wrote you a PO would be unbelievable. But there's a million people that can offer that service, especially when you're trying to sell somebody something that other people can provide the same service. How are you going to differentiate yourself is by thinking about because everybody needs help, Dave. Everybody's got problems.
So what's a way? Give us something sticky. Like what did you give those early days? You want to meet with...
you want to talk about humility. Let's go back to the early days when I was trying to get like Lawrence Taylor and Otis Anderson and Carl Banks, the Giants and some of the Knicks and Yankees. I would stand in the parking lot and I realized that they had all this fan mail back in the day when you'd write letters to players and they felt guilty. There were boxes of fan mail. I said, no problem. I'll go through it. I'll do your fan mail or organize it. The ones that are really serious letters, we'll write back. You'll send an autograph. I wasn't in the autograph business. I was just trying to figure out how to develop a relationship. Lawrence Taylor had 20 boxes of fan mail deep. He felt bad about just leaving it there. I went through it all, would send stuff back to the people. He'd sign some stuff. And all of a sudden I had reason to go contact him. Oh, by the way, it's a serious letter. And I did this for probably about 10 or 15 athletes. Just to give an example, I can't tell you how many athletes that got started. I didn't know if they were going to be a big name or not. Hey, let me help you. I know the charity thing was a big deal. I helped them put a golf outing together. I helped them with their foundation, getting some sponsors. It was a grind to try to get people to buy tables, even at Derek Jeter's event back in the late 90s. Nobody really knew that Jeter was going to be what he was today. And listen, he ended up being more than that. But if you try to get on board with what's important to the other person, more than you try to getting on board with what you're trying to do, that's usually the methodology. And I know it sounds stupid, but I was opening up more fan mail. My fingers were bleeding.
But you also took them for a ride. Like you picked them up, you dropped them off. You just thought of what can you do, right?
Well, I was writing the checks, writing the contracts. I would pick up the athletes. I was relentless. Because back in those days, you didn't have the emails, so you'd have to call these guys up. So when I would talk them into it, I would go pick them up.
Yeah.
And, 2 hours to drive there, 2 hours back, you get to know a player.
Well, let's back up a bit.
Let's it was pretty good.
How did you grow up and what led to, the multi-million dollar deal that you did with Yankee Stadium? You grew up with nothing. Tell us the kind of that little quick, how'd you grow up?
I mean, you probably hear of a lot of rag to riches stories. I mean, for me, I grew up, really poor in Brooklyn. I think one of the most significant things, even I have to remind myself now, I think when you've grown up poor or in adversity, which I'm grateful now when I look back on it, because I grew up in such adversity, no money, no food, really started working when I was 10 years old, which is very rare. I was a very odd kid, very entrepreneurial. I always figured it out right on my feet, 10 years old. And I have kids. And at 10 years old, getting them up and dressed in the morning was like a huge hurrah. So I think for me, one of the things I have to remind myself is I'm not poor anymore. And I think that one of the advantages with people that do grow up with adversity and do grow up somewhat poor is they do have incredibly humble and nimble approach to business, the appreciation of $1. So, for me, one of my big advantages comes from that adversity of not having a lot is my appreciation for what I have on a continual basis. Because you can never have more unless you're grateful for what you have and where you've been. You have to find that gratitude somewhere, somehow. And sometimes it's difficult because some of those tracks that you go down when you're younger, like me, was tough. When you go to bed hungry, you're a roach-infested apartment. But I got going, and I always said to myself, I don't want anything handed to me. I wasn't interested in that. That was a huge part. Like, I didn't feel like anybody owed me anything. I never felt that way. It was really important mindset. I didn't want anything handed. I didn't feel like I'd been cheated. I just felt like I had the ability at a young age to go out and go get what I needed. So I didn't have to live like that anymore. So I wasn't sure I was going to do it, but I followed my mom, which is my second book. You got to have balls was my mother's favorite line. And my mother was always about, you got to have balls as being fearless. It's about being relentless. It's about, if not you, then who? And I always say that to people, like, when you get into this, like, oh, I don't know, this person's out of my league. Or sometimes when you're trying to think about asking a girl out and she's gorgeous and you're like, oh man, she's too good for me. I'm like, if not you, then who? And that was my mother's, big saying about being fearless is such an important aspect in building your career, even at a young age. And even when you get older, is sometimes we talk ourselves out of our dreams all the time before they even step onto the court.
What was your first sales job? What was the first thing you did?
First sales job was the newspapers. I had gone to my mom. I'd switched. I was tired of delivering fruit and vegetables. I was working the register, stocking. Back in those days, I had these little fruit and vegetable stores in Brooklyn. And I wanted to work less after school because I wanted to play ball with my friends. And I started delivering newspapers. And I saw a sign in the window, Dave, that would change my life. It was a newspaper route. And it said, whoever opens up the most accounts will win a box of candy bars. And this was going to be the beginning of my run. As a young kid, hungry, win a box of candy bars. So I'm knocking on doors. I'm going crazy because I want to open up the most accounts. And zero, I go back to my mother and I'm like, we got to move out of this neighborhood. If you're a salesperson out there, it sounds familiar. Nobody wants to buy our product. These leads stink, all that stuff. And my mother says, sit down. I'm going to tell you this one time and one time only. We're not moving out of this neighborhood. You got to stop selling. You got to start serving. You got to start solving. And you better differentiate yourself. You can't expect to sell something that other people sell and expect people just to buy it. You got to differentiate yourself, and you need to be a solution-based business person. Find out problems that people have and try to solve them. And part of the solution will ultimately lead you to selling more newspapers. I'm 12 years old. I'm trying to get my arms around that. And my mother was hammering me. She was not giving me a shoulder to cry on. So I go back out. I'm knocking on doors. I'm nothing. I go to this older woman. She had to be well in her 70s. I knock on her door. I said, man, would you get the paper delivered? She says, absolutely not. I said, why? It's the same price as me as the corner store. She says, yeah, but then I got to tip you. I said, ma'am, if there's torrential downpour, snowstorm, sleet, a heat wave, a woman such as yourself should not be outside. If I bring you milk and bagels on Wednesday and Sunday, and by the way, if you need something else, I'll bring it. Would you get the paper delivered then? She said, that is so sweet. I said, I was concerned. Well, not only did that woman get the newspaper, and she was the mayor. She turned me on, Dave, to the whole neighborhood. I went from 29 dailies to 199 dailies, 234 Sundays, and won 2 boxes of candy bars. And I think how that story, I hope, resonates to anyone listening is that, first of all, are you listening to your customers? And are you a solution-based salesperson, or are you just trying to make a sale? Because when you develop solutions for people that have a problem, you build trust. Because you're really putting yourself in the other person's shoes, and the other person knows that you see them. And once you do that, bam. And that's
we talk about getting results. Yeah.
That's the most valuable lesson I've ever learned in business, because anytime when I approached the Yankees or Jeter, I was always trying to think, how can I help them? What value can I provide them? What can I do that maybe no one else is doing for them that maybe would lean them towards wanting to work with me?
Hey, it's Ann with the Trust Edge team here. As you know, we are passionate about helping you and your team perform at your best. And that's why David wrote his new book, Trusted Leader. This true-to-life parable follows the story of a CEO who uncovers the root issue threatening his organization's success. And in the back half of the book, David provides a roadmap for even how to solve those root issues. Get Trusted Leader for your team, your organization, or even just for yourself at trustedleaderbook.com.
Well, from my friendships, I mean, you are a servant. You have been so generous, and I could go on and on about stories of generosity toward me, toward others, mutual friends of ours that we both know. But, you're also incredibly innovative, and it seems to just come natural for you. It's like, from the everything bagel, we're going to come to in a second, but let's first go to how did this whole thing with selling dirt happen? I mean, really, what happened?
Well, first of all, I don't recommend for anybody, I got issues. So sometimes my thinking doesn't, necessarily, sometimes I'm not crossing at the light. A lot of times, so there's a lot of things that are going on in this brain, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But, the dirt is funny because it really came from my back being against the wall. I always say nothing great happens unless your back's against the wall. So, how do you put your back against the wall more often to create this kind of pressure? I always tell people I'm feeling pressed. I'm like, good. You should feel pressed. The only time anything good's ever going to happen is when you got pressure on you. I mean, think about it. If you're walking down Main Street, walking down the beach, everything's lovey-dovey. Nothing great happens. Only great things happens when you put this immense pressure on yourself. And we're built for it, just like we're built to get through this virus, to be honest with you. So, the dirt thing is, in 2006, 2007, the economy was terrible. The recession with the real estate problems. And I was trying to find an item. I thought we were going out of business. I was just trying to find an item that I could kind of pacify my customers with that wouldn't be that expensive, and kind of pushed me through that time. And we started coming up with all these ideas with the dirt from the fields. And I'm thinking dirt pens, dirt keychains, dirt coasters, dirt clocks, everything dirt. And we started going crazy. And I remember Yankee Stadium dirt, Mantle, DiMaggio, Ruth, Jeter, all the greats have walked on that dirt. So we made sure that was a very special product that people were getting a piece of. But what's crazy is, and we were selling a lot of dirt, a lot of pens, a lot of coasters, a lot of photos. We spray adhesive on there. The dirt would be on there. But it always comes down to gratitude. So I'm writing a letter to Brian Cashman, who's the general manager of the Yankees, and I'm thanking him for all the help.
And I've been in the office with him.
Great. Yeah. Love Brian, my favorite business people. He just does a great job. And I tell my graphic person to draw me a map of all the ballparks. And I know we have dirt from every team in the major leagues. So he draws a picture of all the ballparks of all the teams. And then we put a capsule of dirt. Now, the dirt, not all dirt is created equal at all these ballparks. The viscosity, the color, everything's a little bit unique, believe it or not. So I'm sending him this beautiful poster with all the ballparks. And then each capsule of dirt is a little different. I'm writing a letter to Brian. Brian, I want to thank you for coming to bat for me and helping me with all these players and situations over the last year. And I designed this poster for you. Now you have a little dirt on every team in your office. Now, cute, but here I am selling $29 and $39 gift items with dirt, which I'm just trying to get pacified, get some action going in my company. Now I'm selling a $500 poster. And they're going crazy. People are buying these dirt maps like crazy. And now I'm selling $500 ballpark dirt maps on every team. If Derek Jeter had 3,000 hits, you got to know how many hits he had in each ballpark. And then there's a capsule of dirt to match. And that's how we got to the 50 million. So I always
So you sold 50 million in dirt.
Yeah. And when I tell people what's important is, first of all, your first idea is not your best idea. Here I was, I had a million different ideas with the pens, the coasters, the clocks, but that wasn't my best idea. You got to keep thinking, keep grinding. Second of all, you have to have faith that there is something bigger, even though you can't see it and you're not sure when it's going to come. You have to have faith that this one thing you're working on could end up being much bigger. Faith in your ability, faith in your strategy, and faith in God. And then the third most important thing is gratitude. You can't ever implement more gratitude into your game. I mean, here I am just sending a thank you note, which I didn't have to. But I would want to do something nice for Brian. As it turns out, it's one of my biggest items that we ever sold was the ballpark dirt. So, it's amazing how things do work out. So if you're out there and you're working on something that's worked for you in the past, maybe it's not time to go do something else. Maybe it's time to dig down a little deeper and figure out how you can make that item better.
We didn't get to cover all of it, but you gotta have Ball's book, the business playbook. We're gonna end. I'm gonna ask you a few questions in a few minutes about living on purpose. But your books are great. But there's a whole lot more story in the You Gotta Have Ball's book of where you came from and that journey and nuggets along the way. So people got to think about that. But you got to tell us about the Everything Bagel. What's the deal?
Well, the Everything Bagel was funny because we talked about the delivering of the newspapers, and sure enough, I was delivering more bagels all over the neighborhood. I mean, my shopping cart, I couldn't even deliver the papers on a route, in a bike rather. I needed a shopping cart, and on Sundays, 2 of them. So every morning I would stop by this bagel factory to pick up all the bagels, which is around the corner from my house. Finally, one morning, the guy says, "Brandon, do you want to come and help me bake bagels?" We start at 4 a.m, work till 7:30, deliver your newspapers, you go to school. I said, of course I could do that. I'm like, delusional. But I did that for like 2 months. At 12 years old, I'm waking up at 4 a.m, going to bake bagels. I mean, I can't believe I did this. So anyway, one day I was really ready to quit, whatever. I mean, I couldn't do it. I was falling asleep in school. And he goes, "My night baker just quit. Would you like to get a raise and work at night?" So I started baking bagels at night. I quit my paper route. I'm working every night from 6 to 9. And I was in the morning, you'd be baking thousands of bagels. At night, you were just baking a few dozen here, a few dozen there. And I just got bored. So I started messing around with all these seasonings, twists and onion flats and all kinds of different things. So, I was just bored. And sure enough, I had all the seeds one day and I just threw them all on top of it. This was about 1972. And that's how we came up with the Everything Bagel, just out of pure boredom at night. And it was pretty cool. I mean, listen, I love making all these concoctions of the bagels, and the guy was very generous, teach me how to make a bagel. So I'm kind of like, I have a good idea what a good bagel's like. So that's how I came up with the Everything Bagel.
You're an idea generator. I mean, it's unbelievable being around you and keeping
What's
up.
What's funny is I go to my mother and I go, as I'm baking the bagel, I say, "Mom, I got an unbelievable idea. I'm going to get a truck, a van. I'm going to cut out the side. And on the weekends, I'm going to go up and down the street and people can come up and get bagels, and I'll have the different flavors of cream cheese, lox, everything." My mother's like, and I'll put a big bagel on the top of the van. I'll be the bagel delivery guy. And my mother's like, "One problem, you're 13, you can't drive." I was like, I guess she couldn't help me drive, but I was always trying to
Come on,
think,
Mom,
like,
you can come with.
Well, what's next times what else, Dave, is first to market. And I want to leave you on one quick note on this whole thing, and that what's next and what else times what else is first to market. And listen, there's nothing better. There's no better feeling than when you go first to market on something and you beat everybody to an idea. This is just the greatest feeling. And that's how my brain's always working is, how do you slip into the white space?
I love it. I read a quote recently, actually just this week, about how a lot of podcasts, and I used to ask this, what did you learn from that? What did you learn from that? And there's a lot we can learn from history, but much better, what are you learning now? Right? And what are you learning now? Brandon Steiner, you've built this amazing multi-businesses. You've done some just amazing things. And, what are you learning now?
Well, first, I'm learning that you're never too old to be young. I feel like I'm 19 again. I'm reading my first book over again, which is all about rebranding and recreating. And what happens is you get older, you kind of get stuck. And you got to be careful. Don't be SOS, stuck on stupid. Don't get stuck. Like, to me, I feel like I'm a kid again. Everything's up for grabs. And I'm starting to dream big. I'm starting to dream crazy again. I haven't dreamt like this in a long time. And I think sometimes people, they take themselves out of the game when they don't have to. You decide when you want to end the game. And I think a lot of it is mental. And that's one of the most important things I've learned in the last couple of years is to be yourself and enjoy being yourself. And if you've gotten yourself into a little bit of a rut or some kind of route that kind of has you stuck somewhere, it's only up to you to get out of that rut and route. And sometimes the good Lord will give you the signs, take them.
How do you, speaking of this, because so I remember, so here I'm a young guy. I had no business being part of this leadership group. This was over a decade ago. And you picked me up, and I remember, I'm in New York. I meet with all these publishers. I ended up getting, miraculously one of the biggest deals of a non-celebrity that year from the biggest publisher in my genre that year. Is a miracle thing. But we had met at something, and I said I'd be in town. You said, I'll pick you up. You're outside. Right there, whatever avenue that was, pick me up in front of that publisher. We go up to your house, and we have something to eat, and then we play. You got your own basketball gym, and you got all these young guys come over. And what I remember is you shot the lights out of everybody there that was way younger than you. And secondly, what I remember first, you said, all right, we got to warm up. And we jump on the bike, and we warm up together. And you do all this warm up first. And, but I mean, look, everyone was half your size, but you said that you got to start with a warm up. And I think, I was just thinking about how you keep doing the little things. Are there other little things that you feel like, whether it's health? I mean, you've been married a long time to the same woman, and you've led, and you've got a kind of in a high stress industry. You've kept family, and your kids, I know, are doing well. It's been so fun to see that. But I think of, wow, this guy's into doing the little things. He gets on the bike first. He does this first. He makes that call first. He thanks first. But tell us a little bit about the little things, both, whatever part of life.
Well, I think, there's so many million little things, but I think, first of all, listening to your wife, you can't listen to your wife enough. If you're lucky enough to get married and have a spouse, like in my, listening, taking the advice, especially in my case, it's difficult because my wife is like, 99.9% right. I throw a parade every, one out of 100 when I'm right. But I think that's a really key. I think that people underestimate how they're doing at home and how their home is set up, how much of an effect it has, outside when you get inside. And I think for me, I never realized how important having a home that's set up right with a loving wife and loving kids, how important that is to the environment at work. And when things are not right at home, it's tough for them to be right at work. So, the two work hand in hand. I think for me, those are little things. I've learned to eat a lot better. I'll tell you, one of the most important things I've learned, even in our mastermind that we were together, is how important sleep is, and respecting rest and respecting sleep, and making sure that, when you're cranky, you make bad decisions. So that's like a stupid little thing. But when you're under high pressure and you're in a job that you have to make a lot of decisions, one of the things you don't want to do is make those decisions when you're tired. And I see people do it all the time where, he's in a bad mood, or he's like, I don't want to be the kind of boss. Listen, if I'm cranky, I may be cranky for a whole year. There's a reason, not because I'm a little tired or this or that. I have good reason to be cranky, and I don't mind communicating it. So I think overall, though, what Dave is so important, back to trust, is you got to be an over communicator these days, because not all communication is not equal. So you got to be a texter. You got to be able to get on social. You got to be able to put stuff on Facebook. You got to still be able to pick up the phone. If I took you through my office, I still got to draw with 250 greeting cards. I'm still dropping personal greeting cards. Like, not all communication is equal. And that's what I would say to anyone listening, is that turn up the volume on your communication skills. If you want to have trust and you want to have more serious relationships, turn the volume up in your communication skills. Whether the people work for you, you work for them, assume nothing.
How do you keep grounded with team? Like you got a great home team, amazing wife that's really a partner in it. But outside of that, how do you stay not just grounded but fresh and accountable? You've been the top dog, running the show, leading things. You make decisions fast. But how do you cultivate a team? Because you've built some big teams, big companies with big teams. I've come out and spoken to your team at some of the different ones. But how do you create the team?
I think for me, it's about staying fat. And fat is faithful, adjustable, teachable. And I think for me, the teachable part is very important, because I was thinking about it over the weekend. I was a little frustrated with my team. There's some things that even my new company, I'm not happy with the way they're going. But normally I would have said, we're doing this, we're working in. I would have called an early meeting. But, it's been tough, the virus. And I think as a leader, in this environment, you first have to put empathy first. Where normally I'd be like, numbers, what are we doing? I put empathy first today. And I didn't really get all over my people today, even though they were lagging a little bit. And I've learned to adjust. And I think, the adjustable part and having faith in your people, if you feel like you have good people, think about having more faith in them as opposed to getting more fortune on them, because everything all works out when they know you believe in them. And then for me, I'm in a completely new business. I'm just learning. I mean, my business is much more of a tech business. So what I've learned is, to be teachable. I keep a lot of young kids around me, and I have a lot of young mentors. And I mentor kids all the time, and I try to mentor people. I mentor about 5 or 6 Division I college coaches. Love it. But I have a bunch of kids that are 16, 17 mentoring me, knowing that I'm getting further away from some of the day-to-day things that maybe I'd want to know. So I think reverse mentoring is key. So again, be fat, be faithful, have more faith in people and in the process, knowing that things are going to work out. And that comes with a little bit of patience. Be adjustable. So you did it this way for 10 years. Doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. Adjust. There's different ways of managing people. Realize that in today's world, you may have to manage people a little differently and adjust. And then be teachable. If you want people to be able to want them to learn, be a teachable person yourself. And as a boss, I listen a lot more now than I ever have, because I know there's a lot that I don't know.
I've seen you even in our decade, little over that friendship, and just seen, how someone can be driven, but also value centric. And this last book, the Living on Purpose, 3 foundational pillars, but you talk about faith and family and all these things. I remember you talking about this, about how nowadays, you're still driven, you still love building businesses, giving people jobs and being solution centered, but you get up in the morning and you take a few seconds and you say, what is most important? Tell us about that.
Well, I think, and you've seen a lot now written and talked about, what you do, but I do believe the first 90 seconds of your day is the most important 90 seconds, more important than the other 23 hours, 58 minutes and 30 seconds. And make no mistake that when you get the first 90 seconds right, more than likely you're going to have a good day. And if you don't, you're probably going to have a messed up day. And listen, this morning, I'll be honest with you, I got up and I looked at my wife, says, what's going on? I said, what's going on? I said, I think I'm going back to bed. I'm not right. And I went back to bed for another half an hour because I wasn't feeling like I was going to go into my day with the right mindset. My first 90 seconds was wrong. So it's okay to kind of retool yourself. But remember, what happens at the beginning usually is what's going to happen throughout the day. And I realized that I don't want to all of a sudden get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and realize I missed my kid's test. I want to call my kid at 10 after 2 after he gets home from school because they had a test. If my wife had a mammogram at 11, I want to call her at 11:10 and see how the mammogram went. I don't want to. And what ends up happening is that there's always people that are going to suck the life out of you. And I always think that's on my not to-do list. Everybody's got your to-do list. I got a not to-do list. And what I want to make sure is I do the most important things for the most important people. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to forget that. When I program that into my mindset early in the morning, first thing, more than likely, I'm not going to forget if there's an employee that's having a problem, a family member that's sick, even if it's a quick text or a note. And I make sure those first 90 seconds, I get my MVP list together, Dave. And that's my most valuable priorities. And it's just really, really important. It's a simple task. I think there's a lot of people that have programming early in the morning to do different things. But what's important is first thing in the morning, just get those priorities straight.
I love it. Well, I think one way we're like-minded is just having frameworks for things. When you have a framework for a decision maker, a framework for doing things, we got the MVP, the this, that, seeds, some of these different acronyms that we have frameworks, and it makes our life more consistent. We're going to jump into a lightning round here, so be ready, answer fast as we head toward the finish. You ready for it, Brandon?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. I would love to talk to you all day. I've got so many questions, even as much as I know you. I've got 15 other stories. We'll save the Mickey Mantle story for next time or something else. We're just going to have you on back on. But what's a book or resource that stood out to you lately?
Oh, so many, man. I mean, I love Harvey's last book, about, that, you're not done. There's Harvey Mackay's last book. I'm in the middle of it now. And there's also a Keller Williams book about the millionaire resource that he wrote, which is page by page is just gold. I mean, believe it or not, I go back and still read Swimming with the Sharks or Harvey Mackay too. Mm-hmm. But I read Harvey's last book. I think it's probably could be 5 books. That's how much stuff is in there.
Yeah, full of stuff. Great stuff. Well, and we were introduced to each other because of Harvey and group that way. What's something you can't live without?
Oh boy, not much. As I know that as a fact. Exercise.
What are you doing these days for exercise? What are you doing? Do you do things different?
I do a lot of the same stuff, play basketball, but for me, the exercise isn't about necessarily to lose weight or gain weight, but it's to gain health. And a lot of it's to gain mental health. I have a lot of ADHD issues. I'm sure you could probably pick up some of that even in this conversation, but it's really important that I get that workout out first thing. And most mornings I get some kind of cardio in for no other reason other than for my mental health.
Mm-hmm. Usually we ask what motivates you, and you could answer that, but I'd love to hear you, and this might take a little longer, so I went to lightning, but I got to ask, how do you motivate others? Because you've motivated quite the teams too. So maybe how do you motivate yourself? How do you motivate others?
I think the most important thing is you fill people's mind with training rather than trouble. I think you can motivate others by challenging them is very, very important. Keeping people challenged and keeping people motivated by knowing that they can advance. I think you can only motivate people with 2 methodologies. One, you sell them in and motivate them about today. Here's what can happen that can be great today, this week. Or here's, if we kill ourselves now, a year from now, this is what we're going to have. And I think where a lot of leaders get lost with trust and with that sale about how to motivate people is they start getting in the in-between stuff and they start getting mundane into what they're trying to push through. If you're not selling today, then you've got to sell the future. If you're not selling either one of those, most likely your employees aren't buying it. Right. So I try to motivate people with the truth. And the truth is either what we're working on today or we're working on for the future. And this way they have an expectation level. And I'm always trying to find things that I can challenge them with. Because when people grow, they tend to get much more motivated. Most people's unhappiness comes from being stale and bored.
So you got any last piece of advice before I get where we can connect with you? And one last question. Any last advice you'd say, hey, everybody here is trying to be trusted leaders. We are trying to live out our influence in a high trust way by being trustworthy. Any last advice you'd say for everybody?
Well, I reiterate that, all communication is not equal. And I'm living at a time when people are probably not themselves. They're not their best. They have a little more time probably to do more. And doing one-on-one conversations as opposed to large group Zoom calls may be a lot more effective. It may take more of your time. But, starting off with empathy and checking in with people because their mental health, because of what they're going through, which it could be just being more at home more, parenting more, or just having not some of the things they're used to having at their beck and call, could be very troublesome to people. People are not great when it comes to change, even though we're into 6 months, 7 months of this. So, turn up the volume on your empathy as a leader. And most importantly, do as many one-on-one meetings as you can, even if they're 10 or 15 minutes to check in and they're non-business related, because they go a long way with people knowing that you care and it's not just about the business.
I was on a walk early on in the pandemic with a mentor of mine. He's in the White House every week. Not that he's behind either side of what's going on there, but a guy doesn't want any credit for anything. 20 at least years my senior. But he said as we're on a walk early on in the pandemic, he said, David, I want to tell you something. Small is beautiful, and it's going to be even more beautiful. He said he believes, pro sports are going to take a decade hit, not a 1 or 2 or 3 year hit, as an example. And big events are going to take a big hit. He said, Dave, you speak all over the world. I think you're going to make more of an impact over the next many years, maybe your lifetime, meeting with small, one-on-one, small groups of leaders. Small is going to be the new beautiful, not big. And I think that old thing of one-on-one connections, we need to get back to this, not this light surface big, but this deep, small connection that can really, change the world. So
I agree.
Yeah. So tell us, where can we find more about you these days?
Well, as many of us went home, if you're a collector and you want to sell your stuff, we're at CollectibleXchange. We help you sell and buy some of the coolest collectibles, and that site is blowing up and growing. We have over 50,000 items on there. You can go to brandonsteiner.com, or I'm a big LinkedIn guy. I'm over the 30,000, but you can follow me and message me, and I try to respond to every one of those messages if there's something I can do to help. If you need some help with your collectibles or you need an athlete to help grow your business, I'm your guy. I'm more than happy to help you. I'm really enjoying my business these days because I can, even though I have a much smaller staff than I've had in years, it's so much more fun being more hands-on and doing more and have more interaction with customers. I'm actually enjoying that again. So I hope to hear from some of you out there that have an issue or something I could do to help you grow your business.
And I'll tell you just from personal experience, you've got sports people in your life where if you just, I remember, you inspired me, and I would buy someone, or we get a signed ball from this person, Mariano, or a signed Lou Holtz thing, or a signed whatever, just like, hey, thanks for doing this, and they just, that means so much to them, and it reminds them. I think one thing that it does that people don't realize, they get that all the inspiration that goes with sports and competition and winning and all that. What they don't get is it brings them back to childhood. It brings them back to memories with their mom, their dad, with their uncle, with what they loved as a kid, and it brings this back. And I know if you went into our office just 20 yards from me here, from my studio, you'll see several things from Brandon Steiner and from the team out there. And the other thing I would say, by the way, is Brandon is an amazing speaker. So, if you're not bringing us in, bring in Brandon, right?
I'm right behind you. I love you as a speaker, Dave. You do a great job and talk about probably one of the most important things in building relationships and building trust, which a lot of people are afraid to talk about that. So, so I'm right behind you because relationships are everything.
Brandon is fantastic.
Grateful whenever I get on the stage with you, man. Anytime is always a blessing.
It is, and I just would say, no matter what, I'd say that in jest, because there's places where Brandon is the clear choice, and you should just. I hope more people get to hear your voice, because I think now you've created all these stories, and you've come to a real time. And I knew you're always a generous giver, but you've really come to a time where you're giving a ton back, and you're helping, and I know you're giving to a big foundation that you're a part of and everything else. So visit Brandon at brandonsteiner.com. Learn more about him, read the books, and also that method of giving first, you might find something at the site there to give that builds a connection that actually just can lead to some amazing things. So last thing, you know what it is. It's called the Trusted Leader Show. So we end with this. Who is a most trusted leader to you, and why?
The most trusted leader to me probably was Alzy Jackson. He was a hat maker from Philadelphia who had a kid. I started working in his kitchen by sharpening his knives when I was a dishwasher. And one of the reasons why, he always told me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it, even if it wasn't popular, even if it created static between us. And he was always thinking forward for me also, thinking about what was best for me. Not only at the moment, but down the road. It was always a high level of diligence about how he thought I can grow to go. And I think that, it's such an important aspect of leadership. When I think about this guy, Alzy Jackson, we would work 90 to 100 hours a week in a 100+ degree kitchen. And one morning we were making Chinese food, Dave, and we picked chickens for the chicken chow mein. My job was to make the fried rice, for 500 kids. That's 3 hours to make the fried rice. We had worked all morning, 100 degrees, exhausted. We go back to a room at 1:30 for a 2-hour break. And we realize my friend comes in my room and wakes me up. It's already 6:30. Like, wow, we missed dinner. We run into the kitchen. They already served dinner. Dinner was over. And we're going crazy. And we go over to the chef and we're like, why didn't you wake us? Listen, the meal was already made. It was an easy meal to serve. And we figured we'd let you sleep. We had to be removed from the kitchen. We were going crazy, throwing stuff, yelling at the other cooks for letting us sleep. And when I realized the motivation and the trust we had and the pride we took, anybody else said, okay, gave us the night off. No, we wanted to be in that kitchen. We wanted to serve that meal. And we took pride in that. And it was amazing when I think back on that. Here I am having to have to physically be removed from the kitchen because we're yelling, screaming, and really getting face to face with everybody about not waking us up to go serve the meal. And I think that's what you want with your employees. You want them, instead of asking for more time off, you want them to ask for more time on. Yeah. And that's when you know you've been a trusted leader.
That is true. That's a trusted leader for sure. Well, you are a leader I trust. There's no doubt about that. at trustedleader.com. We are going to put show notes. We're going to put all of Brandon's websites and LinkedIn. We're going to put some videos so you can see him speaking. He's amazing on stage. We'll put links to his books. And I hope you reach out and learn more from this amazing guy and someone I certainly trust. So keep building trust. And thank you, Brandon. And we will see you next time.